so much history for this player, and we talk about that flexibility and the chaos. Rolling with the punches, SOS is going to be definitely comfortable in this metagame. You know, some people call it cheesy, some say it's uncomfortable. To SOS, this is his home. This is the place he has always meant to belong. And I'm just very curious to see, because ShoWTimE no doubt has a lot of practice in this, but I feel like there's a point if you go too far down the rabbit warren of the crazy scenarios, that SOS will grow stronger and ShoWTimE will grow a little bit more confused about what's happening in the game.
I am awfully worried about that. Big fan of ShoWTimE myself, but SOS, I mean, sometimes you just you have to be a fan of them. Just like, okay, that was too silly. All right, like you got my vote. But ShoWTimE was facing a Mana, another kind of cheesy Protoss, and it was all proxy robo, which a lot of people say is quite good. The idea of a hard counter, maybe it's not, maybe it's going to be something even weirder or different, but if it's Blink, then that's what I was specifically bringing up that point about Korea versus non-Korea about too. So that's exciting. We're about to see what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very, very cool to see. Of course, glaive adept timing attacks and things like that, always potential, same with charge. But I actually really enjoy a Blink meta. It's something where, obviously, Stalkers are not the greatest damage output for their cost. But the Blink, it gives you an ability to be annoying, to be maneuverable, to be flexible, to kind of go in and find openings where you may. SOS is actually finished just yet for ShoWTimE.
This is going to be really close. 2 Archons morphing in with the shield batteries finishing up, +1 finishing up for ShoWTimE as well, but he will be lacking that charge. Will that be the difference maker? Hallucinating a couple of Archons. I don't believe there's an observer on the front line, so that will soak some shots, and the shield batteries will certainly help out.
Yeah, I mean, even though there's no charge for ShoWTimE yet, the Zealots still have the same damage output. And you know what? Holding the Concave, the second shield battery finishing there. These Archons doing some great work, and more Zealots coming in. Great ferrying there from the Prism, keeping those Archons alive for now. SOS continuing to warp in more and more, but he's lost one of his Archons.
Yeah, very good focus fire here from ShoWTimE. We've got the Archon, then started focus firing down the Stalkers, and is absolutely demolishing this fight. SOS forced to retreat, but awfully late in my opinion. That was already going rather poorly for him. He's going to have to try and do some pretty sick harassment. He does have a third Nexus, but actually so does ShoWTimE. Very even probe count. It's now just that ShoWTimE has that momentum. He's still chasing after the Warp Prism as well, which has a couple of units that cannot actually fight those Archons. Will it be a counter? He has to know the Warp Prism is going to...
But the Archons, of course, become very powerful against that. I like the choice here from ShoWTimE. There's no natural advantage right here, but now as he pulls the Archons across the map, as he pulls all of his units over to this side, that is where his force does grow in strength. No more probe production just yet, I don't believe, for ShoWTimE, but he's pulling home and he restarts his probes. So he's going to go to that next step, adding gases on the third base as well. He doesn't want to throw it away by taking an over-eager engagement into this beautiful spread of SOS.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, your army supplies are a bit different. There was a very small upgrade timing that's now basically being lost, but you don't really want to force the issue if they're obviously prepared for the engagement and they have a similar composition. Again, no, not many Immortals, but that sometimes doesn't seem to add a lot if they get cornered by those.
8 for ShoWTimE, and there we go. ShoWTimE, he's getting in with a small counter attack, but at the same time, SOS pounces in from both sides. Those Archons very exposed to the right-hand side, but they get pulled to the back. The Warp Prism here definitely paying off for ShoWTimE so far, and as those Zealots disappear for SOS, we see those 2 Immortals just hailing in with so much damage from the back. The Immortals starting to gun down those Archons.
Yeah, picking on top of the Archons, they will eventually punch through their extreme shields, and that is going to be game 1.
Well, we are going to be launching in to a map and number 2 of this Protoss vs. Protoss, and looking to seal it out, looking to go through to those group stages. Representing Big Esports in the bottom right, in the red, he is ShoWTimE.
In the top left, repping Korea and generic green wings, he's the blue Protoss, SOS. Do you think the map will play a huge part here?
You know, I'm curious about that. There are, I guess, overall less places to proxy. Sometimes searching Triton, if someone's willing to proxy in a very odd position, seems like an impossible task. But here on Ephemeron, not as many areas. Definitely something we're going to see a very early scout for ShoWTimE. One of the most macro-heavy Protoss players says, you know what, I'll build one more. Let's go 46 before just committing to charge lots and Archons. You know, SOS is a little ahead of him on the production, so just keep your eyes on those Archons, but they're so crisp. The moment the Templar Archives finish, ShoWTimE just immediately 4 High Templar, 2 Archons, and he's also starting his +2. So if this game goes for a few more minutes, ShoWTimE will get a big advantage, but right now, SOS has a very scary army.
Yeah, I mean, it's 10 hour supply up, so that could be Defender's advantage and a better concave. We'll see if they use their Stalkers as well. Perhaps a War Prism could go down. Both of them Guardian shielding real quick here.
Oh,
the Archon from the back.
The Archon goes down there for ShoWTimE so quickly.
Yeah, and he blinks forward, maybe to try and catch that War Prism, but into the fire of the Archons, and the Stalkers finally catch the War Prism. They have sacrificed all of themselves to do so. The War Prism of ShoWTimE going to try and make magic out of whatever's left over here, and maybe, nah, it's actually not even a maybe. He absolutely cannot hold. The probes are being pulled, and he thinks maybe, but no, nope, not any maybes.
Those slow Zealots just walking slowly into that battle for ShoWTimE as well. Just a little bit too far behind.
Right now, it's rare, but it doesn't matter.
Your face always matters.
All right, so the score is 1-1. You guys saw the tail end of that crazy first game. In this game, believe it or not, Soul killed 55 orc. Well, it's 77 now, but he killed 55 at one point with drilling claws. Gerald was supposed to be dead, but he's got a lot of Disruptor boys, and this game is getting a little wild. He just lost 40 supply trying to kill Planetary. Did not get it, by the way, but he's still in the game. Don't ask me how. It's Protoss, it's magic, and he kind of needs to get the job done real soon.
Oh man, this looks really, really dicey. The Disruptors are such a big problem here for Soul, though. He just doesn't have like a huge amount of Liberators. He doesn't have a huge like anti-Disruptor, I guess, counterplay here by the looks of things.
Don't forget, tournament live on the line for both these guys. This is the lower bracket. Gerald is still fighting, man. Now he's going to get an Orbital. This is actually a very wild series. This game, it felt so disastrous, and at one point you're like, maybe you can get something done. It's like, nah, maybe not. I mean, obviously it's so hard to get up to this ramp. Or this ramp over here. I really can't do it. No, sorry guys. I tried, but it's the wrong hand, okay guys?
Just so everyone at home knows, we have drawing tools in our PCs, alright?
We don't have advanced ballistics. There is a fusion core, but this game has just been way too hectic. So is once again counterattacking. He's actually down in supply at this point. I don't think Gerald can recall, because he recalled right before we jumped into this game as well. But this series is nuts, man. These two Polish players are just putting it all on the line. And Gerald is having actually a pretty damn good showing. He also defeated Christie. Oh my god.
Does that mean Soul loses though, Roddy? I mean, Gerald's starting to climb up quite high in supply here. His army's looking very solid.
Yep, I look at very few metapacks here.
Nice yellow line.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to push, right? Look at Gerald. Is Gerald actually going to cause a massive upset? He has Soul started so well to this tournament, defeating Denver in the first round. But he is in all the trouble at this point. He killed 55 probes, guys, with drilling claws.
Wow.
I actually think the game is pretty much over.
Yeah, it's really tough because Soul, if he unsieges those libs to move forwards, he's just going to get jumped on, right?
It is one orbital command at this point. I'm sorry, James.
That's fine, don't worry. I know you're keen, I know you're super cheesy.
I mean, I keep waiting for it, but it's actually been kind of, I mean, a little standard. It's game number 3. Whoever wins this moves on to the group stage on Thursday. In the bottom right, as the blue Protoss, he is SOS.
And up here in the top left-hand side, in the red, representing big esports, known as The Wall, he is ShoWTimE.
It's kind of amazing how far you jump forward for be like, yeah, you know, whatever. Slightly low, you know, slower third.
It's a big investment. Takes a long time to kick in, doesn't it? So, you know, it's not guaranteed. And often a Blink player would find themselves across the other side of the map, and there's still the option of something like an Immortal drop getting you. A couple of Adepts shading in if your Stalkers are on the wrong side of the map and taking out a handful of probes. So big disruption's always capable. Once again, charge here, starting up, +1 attack on the way. So very similar to game 1, where we can remember SOS went for a big charge Archon, but he missed out on sniping the third. So who knows, maybe we see an exact kind of replica of that scenario where ShoWTimE once again goes for the third, sees the attack coming, and if SOS just takes out the third base, pulls back, and is up in expansion, I really would love to see, you know, the rare thing in a tournament is the exact same matchup of builds later on in a series, but with a different outcome. So very curious to see what happens.
Let's not forget that ShoWTimE did like a blink that he ended up canceling for that first game too. So it feels like if he had, with those charge lots, he does have an Archon drop going to the main base. ShoWTimE was suspicious of it, saw it, something like that. He just warps in the only thing he can. I think he just ran out of warp gates.
Yeah, a few Zealots going to come in. Zealots not very good at dealing with Archon drops, of course. And a few more Stalkers going to come back to shoo that away. But, I mean, there are different angles SOS can hit here. He's got a big army on the front. That drop in the back, though, it's kind of being trapped and cornered a little bit. And Neither player probing right now, but that +2 as that inches closer and closer. Getting up a good Archon count as well as the upgrade advantage is going to be huge. But you know what? That's a big army. He sees it coming. You've got to be together and controlled here as ShoWTimE, and you've got to make sure that Archon drop is unable to unload in the back. He's got a line of Stalkers there, but he's just pulled them a little bit away from the edge. He's got to put those Stalkers back, I believe. Was that recall?
That was recalled, I think.
Ooh, yes it was. Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
So he correctly pulls the Stalkers forward, adding any little bit of DPS as he is trying to hold, I mean, to that +2, but actually SOS starts his own upgrade, a +1 armor, which is very interesting to see. You see +2 like almost every game, or maybe shields, because that Archon count is growing. Okay, cancels that, which makes sense to me, but yeah, okay. +2 is going to finish for ShoWTimE, is the point. And I thought that was going to be the big question mark, and now he's going to have that upgrade advantage.
It's a big one. It still all comes down to the angle of the engagement, though. That takes priority over everything in this matchup. You want to have a large arc of units, and you want your opponent to kind of walk into your arc. Oh, no. ShoWTimE going way too far out on the map, getting surrounded by SOS's Zealots. He is in huge trouble.
Why? I don't know why he went out on the map. I mean, he must have seen that he had the upgrade advantage, but it's not going as well as he was hoping. The Zealots do get obliterated for SOS, but he has so many Archons behind this. He's not going to try and juggle the Immortals, but why push out in that situation?
I mean, that Zealot count from SOS was insane. He had so many Zealots, and they got such good surface area. ShoWTimE there, he wanted to reassert control. He didn't have as much information there. He didn't know how many units there were. SOS's army just stretched way further back than he realized. A single Zealot chasing all the workers off ShoWTimE's third base. They're trying to run across the north of the map. Unfortunately, refugees in this battle. And look at that arc. An arc of Archons. That's like 8 Archons right now in a huge arc. You walk into that, you're going to get hit simultaneously by a lot of damage.
He's force-fielding off the third base as he gets a freebie kill on that. ShoWTimE may be anticipating that, thinks he has some time here to actually use his War Prism, not just before Zealots go across the map, but also to juggle. Like, that is a very good defensive tool that he is committing to the other side of the map, hoping that SOS isn't actually going to engage into him. And he's right about it so far, but now he's revealed that harassment. It will catch a lot of probes, and that's when SOS strikes. The Immortals do have a fair bit of buffer here to try and tear down those Archons. This might not go... I mean, there's so many Archons behind this, though, for SOS that still aren't in on the action. There's actually 3 Archons that haven't really done a lot of attacking.
Big Zealot Warpin does come in there, though. The other Archons finally find their way to the front. The Desperation probes, not useful against that.
He just had so many Archons. Like, they